You know, we've all been there, faced with some long contract. We just sign on the dotted line, hoping, trusting that it's a fair deal. But what happens when that signature isn't really a choice? What happens when it's the result of some really intense pressure? Well, today, we're going to dig into how the law can actually look right past a signature to protect people from agreements that are, let's be honest, anything but fair.
So let's just jump right in with a question that sounds simple but is legally just fascinating. When is a promise not a promise? Or to put it another way, when can a contract that seems totally solid and binding just get torn up? The answer, it turns out, lies in these incredible stories where one person's consent isn't really consent at all.
And I can't think of a better story to illustrate this than a really dramatic Australian court case involving what you could call the impossible prenup. And trust me, this is not just some dry legal dispute. It's a human drama that went all the way to the highest court in the country.
Okay, so picture this. You've moved your entire life across the world for the person you love. Your family is flown in, the wedding is literally just days away, and then your fiancé puts a prenuptial agreement in front of you. And it's not just any agreement, it's incredibly one-sided. And the message is absolutely brutal and clear. Sign this or the wedding is off. The whole thing is over. This is the exact high-pressure situation a woman found herself in. And the power imbalance here, it was just extreme. On one side, you've got a wealthy 67-year-old property developer. He's in his home country, he's got all his resources, all his support. And on the other side, a 36-year-old woman, an immigrant, thousands of miles from her home and family with almost no money to her name. She was, for all intents and purposes, completely dependent on him. Not just financially, but emotionally, socially, everything.
So here's the crucial thing. She did physically sign the document. Her signature was right there on the paper. But the real question for the court was it truly her choice? And this brings us to two really powerful legal ideas the court used to break this whole thing down. First up, there's this concept called undue influence. Now, this isn't just about someone being persuasive, okay? This is about one person using a special position of trust and power to the point where the other person's free will is just completely overwhelmed. The court looked at their relationship and saw that massive power difference was being used to get her to sign.
And then you've got the second piece of the puzzle, economic duress. This is all about what the law calls illegitimate pressure. The threat here wasn't physical, right? It was the threat to detonate her entire life, cancel the wedding, end the relationship, and leave her stranded in a new country. That kind of financial and emotional ultimatum is a powerful, powerful form of coercion. It basically forced your hand.
And the court's final opinion it summed it all up perfectly. They said she was powerless with no choice but to sign. That single line from the High Court really cuts right to the heart of it. It says loud and clear that her signature wasn't an act of free will. It was an act of pure desperation.
Now you might be thinking, wow, that's a huge decision. And it is. But the idea that the law should provide a safety net for vulnerable people, well, that's a core principle that's been around for a very long time. This verdict actually builds on a whole century of legal thinking about what fairness really means.
Yeah, this is not a new idea at all. If you look back to 1936, this case, Johnson v. Buttress, the court stepped in to protect someone who was influenced to give away their property. Fast forward to 1983, another case basically established that intense economic pressure can be just as bad as a physical threat. So when the Thorne v. Kennedy case came along in 2017, the court was really just applying these same time-tested ideas about fairness to a very modern situation.
So, what was the final call? Well, it probably won't surprise you to hear the High Court sided with the bride. They declared the agreement totally void. It was this landmark win for fairness. But how exactly did they get there? Let's look at their reasoning. The court's logic was actually super clear and methodical. First, they just laid it out. They identified her extreme disadvantage, emotionally, financially, all of it. Second, they pointed out there was zero real negotiation. It was a classic take-it-or-leave-it deal. Third, they ruled that the pressure to sign was completely illegitimate. And so, finally, putting all that together, they declared the whole thing void. It was just a step-by-step takedown of an unfair contract.
At the end of the day, this case is about the power of the word no. Or maybe more accurately, it's about those situations where someone is so powerless they can't actually say no. And the lessons here, they go way beyond just prenups.
So what's the big takeaway for all of us? Well, probably the biggest lesson is that a signature isn't some magic spell. The law gets that a real agreement needs a real choice. When there's a huge power imbalance, courts can and they will step in. It's just a powerful reminder that fairness can sometimes matter more than the fine print.
and that the law really does have these safety nets built in to protect people from being taken advantage of.
Look, this case was pretty extreme for sure, but the principles behind it, they apply everywhere. So it really leaves us with one last big question to think about. In a world that's just full of fine print and tight deadlines, how can we make sure that fairness and a genuine choice is always at the heart of any agreement we make?